Hey there, thanks so much for tuning into this message from Faith Community. While you're here, let us know where you're joining from in the comments and share anything that sticks out to you throughout the message. We hope you're encouraged and inspired to move from where you are to where God wants you to be.
I discovered this show on Netflix that I've been spending some time watching, and it's called The Movies That Made Us. I don't know if anybody has ever seen it. And it goes behind the scenes about some of the most, nostalgic movies that we had growing up. I say we, me, at least growing up. But Home Alone's on there, and Forrest Gump, and Back to the Future. And really what you see behind the scenes look is what happened to get these movies to come to reality. Because when you watch a movie, all you see is the finished product, right? And you're totally not aware of everything that went on behind the scenes to get this movie to be a movie. There's so much chaos. There's so much letdown. They don't have the right budget. Storms come in. It's a crazy amount of things that happen. We get to appreciate the finished product, but all these things going on, and you really get to see the role that the director plays in the movie, right? The role that he or she plays in getting it from a script to what you see on screen. But it's interesting because you never see the director in the movie, unless they make a cameo, right? And you know who they are. But you never see the director. The director's behind the scenes. They're speaking to the actors and to the cameras and to the set design and to how it should feel and how it should look like. And their fingerprints and their touches are all over the finished product because you can't just get a script and then make a movie. There has to be someone with a vision, right? There has to be someone who can see it from beginning to end, who can be before you even get there, and can come behind you and fix some things. It's really fascinating if you watch it, but I got to thinking about this whole idea of what it's like to sit in the director's chair and what it's like to never see them, but they're responsible for how everything turned out. And we've been in a series called Sunday School Stories. We've been taking a look at different characters throughout Scripture and their stories, and today we're going to look at Esther. And Esther is a fascinating book in the Bible. It is one of two books, but where the name of God is never mentioned. God's name is not mentioned one time in the 10 chapters of the book of Esther. I know, Google it right now. You can look at it. Open your Bible, look through all 10 pages. He's not there in written form. He's not even referred to. He's not even alluded to. But he's all over it. He's all over the book of Esther. It's fascinating. I didn't discover that until I went to college, and we were sitting in class one day, and they're like, this is one of the books that the mention of God is not in it. And I'm like, how did it make the Bible? Right? Like, how did it get in the Bible if God isn't there? And then I started to think, how many times of our lives do we not see God's hand and God's providence in a situation until we look back on it? In the midst of it, he wasn't there. In the midst of it, we couldn't see him. We couldn't hear him. We couldn't feel him. It's like Waymaker. Even though I can't see you, you're there. Even though I can't feel you, you're working. But it's oftentimes in retrospect, when we look back, we say, man, God was all over that. Esther really is, just because you can't see him, just because you can't feel him, just because his name isn't plastered all over everything, doesn't mean he isn't there. Matter of fact, he assumes the position of the director's chair. And his fingerprints are all over it because he knows the beginning from the end. He's envisioned the whole process. God has never caught off guard by anything. He's never been surprised. God has never been surprised. God has never had an idea. Right? Everything emanates and comes from him. He's not surprised. And this story is really crazy. Like, we're not going to read all 10 chapters because there's so much. Right? I'm gonna have to forego some of the details. I really want to do a series on Esther, but I just wanted to, at least one message of this series has to be about a courageous woman, right? Not only men get the credit in Scripture, some pretty bad women in Scripture. Courageous, determined, amazing women. One of those women, I think, is Mary, Jesus' mother. We're getting off track. But anyway, Esther. So this story takes place when the Jews are under the reign of the Persian Empire, just like Daniel, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The Persian Empire was huge, huge. It is probably considered one of the most, probably one of the largest empires in the history due to the amount of the population that was underneath their rule, which they estimate was almost 50% of people on the earth at this time were underneath Babylonian or Persian captivity. 50%. That's a lot. It's a lot. Esther grew up in this environment. Not only that, she was an orphaned exile. Her parents died when she was a kid. She's a foreigner living in a foreign land. She's not Persian. She's Jewish. Her parents are dead. thankfully, she had an uncle whose name was Mordecai, who adopted her and raised her. So she's an orphaned exile, and she becomes queen of the Persian Empire through a crazy series of events. You open up the book of Esther, which comes before Job in the Old Testament, and you find out there's this king. His name is Xerxes, and Esther begins like probably every good movie with a party, right? A party. The opening scene is a 6-month party. 180 days, 6-month party. He's throwing this party to showcase his wealth and his dominion and his power. And after, a while of participating in the festivities and having a little bit too much to drink, there's an argument that breaks out. Who's the most beautiful woman in all the kingdom? King Xerxes, of course, it's my queen, Queen Vashti. And he invites Queen Vashti to come in because she threw a party for all the women. So there was a men's party, there was a women's party, and they were partying all through 6 months. That's a long party, all right? And scholars believe that because she refused to come in. Why did she refuse to come in? Just so they could look at her beauty. Some scholars really believe that what he was asking her to do was to come in not fully clothed and be put on display for all these men to look at so he could prove that she was the most beautiful. She refuses. King Xerxes is furious, a shot against his pride. He calls his counselors together and they say, what should we do about Queen Vashti? She embarrassed me. And they say, what we need to do is we need to abandon her from the kingdom because now all the women in the kingdom are going to think that they can do that to their husbands, that they don't have to listen. It's legitimately there. Look it up, first chapter. They're like, we can't let these women run amok and not listen to their husbands. King, this is on you. So he banishes Queen Vashti. She's no longer the queen. And after a while, the king's like, I need a queen. So what are we going to do? And there's this kind of like this search throughout the entire kingdom to find the most beautiful woman so that she can be his queen. And it's not like these women really had a choice. 300 women are chosen throughout the entire kingdom to come and stand before the king and just to see if they're beautiful enough so that he'll choose them. 300 women to be queen. And not only that, they get a year's worth of beauty treatments before they go before the king. You're thinking, oh, that's amazing. Yeah, but they don't really have a choice. All right? Because if they're not chosen as queen, they have to remain in the king's harem for the rest of their lives. They effectively are signing up for a life of sexual slavery. That's what it is. That the king can call on them anytime and they have to come in and perform for the king. Do whatever he wants. Esther is chosen, an orphaned exile in a foreign land, but they don't know she's a Jew. Matter of fact, her uncle Mordecai says, don't tell them who you are. Don't tell them that you're an Israelite. She gets 6 months of this kind of treatment, 6 months of that kind of treatment, a year waiting in a harem just to stand before the king to see if he chooses her. And the Bible says that Esther is beautiful. She's a beautiful woman. She goes before the king, and the king chooses her and says, Esther, you will be my queen. Her Jewish name is Hadassah, but her Persian name is Esther. Chooses her to be queen. And it's an amazing thing. She becomes the queen over the entire Persian Empire. But it's not like she has any power. It's not like she has any authority. She can only see the king when the king wants to see her. She can't just walk in and talk to him and do anything. No, she's just a glorified slave. That's all she is, really. But she has some influence. And the story begins to grow from there. Esther becomes queen amazingly. This foreigner, this exile, this orphan becomes queen. But there's another man in the kingdom. His name is Haman. Haman is a Persian man. Haman is incredibly insecure, but he has wealth and he has power and he has connection with the king. And he hates Mordecai. See, Mordecai has this kind of job. He works at the king's gate, so he hears things coming in and going out. And he has FaceTime with Haman. And Haman wants Mordecai to kind of bow and show respect, and Mordecai refuses. I ain't bowing to you. Haman's so insecure that he goes to the king and he devises this plan. He says, I'll give you 10,000 pieces of silver or some kind of precious metal. I'll put it into the king's treasury if you'll just sign a decree that on this day, all of the Jews across the Persian Empire can be attacked, and if we attack them, we can kill them and we can take their land. The king's like, I get 10,000 pieces of silver? Sure, go do your thing, bro. He doesn't know that Esther's a Jew. So Haman puts this out. There's a decree that goes out through the entire empire that 11 months from today, it's fair game on the Jews. Effectively, the king signs a decree for genocide to take place. This is ethnic cleansing. So you got sex slavery going on. We got ethnic cleansing going on. You thought the Bible was a safe book, right? This is the darkness of what's going on. And God is not present. His name is never mentioned. Esther is shielded from this. She doesn't know about this decree. And can you imagine being a Jewish person in that kingdom, finding out that in 11 months, people are just going to come. They can fair game. No type of retribution can be put in place. They can fair game to kill you, take your property, do whatever you want. You got to wait 11 months, and you are powerless against it. 11 months, you know it's coming. When Mordecai hears it, it says that he is so forlorn that he puts sackcloth and ashes on, and basically what that's a sign of is he's just so repentant and humbled before God that like we're dead, we're doomed, there's nothing that we can do. God, have you brought us this far to leave us like this? Esther hears about how Mordecai is, and she doesn't know what's going on. And she reaches out to Mordecai through basically a servant, and they start corresponding. It's like they're texting back and forth what's going on, because she's in the harem, she's in the king. And Mordecai begins to talk with Esther, who's his adopted daughter. And the conversation that ensues is pretty incredible. Now, let me just skip to the end of the story. It all works out. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it, right? It's like any good movie in America. The good guys win, okay? It works out. God moves. God shows up. God rescues his people. And he does it in an amazing way, but we never see it. Right in the story. We never see him specifically. We just see his fingerprints on everything. I wanted to just talk a little bit today of kind of what do we do when God's behind the scenes? How do we live a life and let God be in the director's seat? What do we do? And while I can't be uber practical with you today and say, do this, do this, do this, there are some things, the principles that we can learn just from how the characters in the story interact with one another and how they interact with God. And so I want to look at these three things. I want to look at Mordecai's faith, Esther's courage, and God's providence. Mordecai's faith, Esther's courage, and God's providence. So here in chapter 4, all right, see, this is the challenge of trying to get through 10 chapters in 35 minutes. But chapter 4, verses 8 through 14, this is when Esther hears about Mordecai, and Mordecai begins to have a conversation with Esther. Now, between chapters 1 and 2, they just estimate that there was a 4-year period through all this happened. So there's time that has gone on. We don't know how long it's been since Mordecai and Esther talked to one another. It said Mordecai gave Hathach a copy of the decree. He's the guy that's running back and forth the messages, issued in Susa, which is the city they were in, that called for the death of all Jews. He asked Hathach to show it to Esther and explain the situation to her, since she didn't know what was going on. He also asked Hathach to direct her to go to the king and beg for mercy and plead for her people. So Hathach returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. Esther is their only hope. Esther is their last resort. There is no other way to appeal to the king except through Esther. The pressure and the weight that is on her shoulders is incredible. I mean, she is bearing the weight of an entire people group on her shoulders because of the position that she's now in as queen, of which she really didn't even have a choice. So Mordecai tells Esther this, and then this is what Esther's response was. Go back and tell Mordecai this. All the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in this manner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out his gold scepter. And the king hasn't called for me to come for him for 30 days. So Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. Esther said, look, Mordecai, you need to understand something. I may be the queen, but we can't just walk in and talk to the king. Like, nobody can go in and just talk to the king when he's in his inner court. You've got to be invited in. And even when you're invited in, he's got to hold out this golden rod thing and say, okay, you're good enough to talk to me. And he hasn't even sent for me for 30 days. I can't just walk up in there and do what you're asking me to do. There's rules, right? I may be the queen, but I'm not really have any power. That's what she tells Mordecai. And she knows the situation, right? Mordecai said, beg for mercy, plead before the king. Esther, you've got to do this, you're our only hope. And Esther says, it could cost me my life. It could cost me my life. Do you understand? This is what Mordecai wrote back. It's interesting, his response. He says, Esther, don't you think for a moment that because you're in the palace, you'll escape when all other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this? Now, the most powerful, the most popular line in all of Esther is such a time as this, right? If you've grown up in church, you've heard that. If you haven't, well, then that's what most people associate with the book of Esther. Such a time as this. And we say it with such definition. We're so definitive that Mordecai was like, Esther, you have been made queen for such a time as this. But he didn't say that. He says, who knows if perhaps. There's a big difference there. Big difference. If you come to me with a problem and says, hey, look, I need $1,000 by tomorrow. And I say, done. I will give you $1,000 tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Great. If you say same thing and I say, who knows if perhaps I have $1,000 for you tomorrow? Does that make you feel good? No, there's not a lot of, definitive feelings going on there. Mordecai says, who knows if perhaps, Esther, that this is the very moment. This is the very time. This is the very reason for which you have been made queen. Mordecai plays a very interesting role in Esther's life. And I think he plays a role in her life that we all need someone or people to play in our lives. Mordecai is a voice of faith and truth and direction to Esther. Mordecai is really the voice of a father to her. I know he became her father in a physical sense, but I want us to kind of see that we all need Mordecai in our life. We all need Mordecai because we'll all be Esther at some point. We'll all be Esther. Now, the goal of the story isn't to be Esther or Mordecai. The hero of the story is God. But I want us to recognize that we need Mordecais, we are Esther, and maybe some of us, will be a Mordecai to someone because Mordecai, what he does is he does not comfort Esther at all, does he? Did you find any comfort in his words? Mordecai, I could die. Esther, don't you think for a moment you're going to escape this just because you're in the palace? That's not comforting. It's okay, Esther, just do your thing, just be queen, enjoy those beauty treatments. I know it's not, blah, blah, blah. No. Esther, you're there for a reason. Esther, God promoted you. Now, we don't read that, but we get the sense that, hey, you are here for a reason. You didn't make yourself queen. You didn't earn it. You're an orphaned exile. There's no way you could be queen. Somebody behind the scenes must have put you in this position, and he clarifies for her the reality. He's a voice of truth. The reality of the situation. Reality. Esther, this is the situation for the Jews. This is the situation for you, Esther, and these are the consequences of your actions either way. I don't know about you, but I am hungry for truth. Anybody else? I want to know the truth. Like right now, what's the truth? I don't want to know your facts. Everybody's got facts. Facts ain't the truth. They're part of truth. What's the truth? What does truth do? Truth clarifies reality. There are many definitions of truth, but in general, truth clarifies reality. It sets the situation. It helps us understand what's going on, and it helps us understand what it is that we need to do. Mordecai's faith that he has is when he says this: if you don't rise up now and do what you're supposed to do, deliverance will come for the Jews from some other place. He had enough faith to believe that God was going to save the Jews, whether it was through Esther or not. Like he's just saying, even if you don't, Esther, because of who God is, because of his character, because of our history, God's going to bring somebody. But I want you to know, Esther, I want you to know, you have the opportunity right now. And he speaks that truth. He imparts that faith that, hey, God's going to do it. But Esther, here's the truth. Clarifies her reality, clarifies her purpose and her role in this. Her role in this, and says, who knows if perhaps that right now you are the queen for this exact time. He pushes her into her destiny. He gives her direction. See, we don't always need to be comforted. Fathers don't always comfort, do they? Mothers don't always comfort either. But there's sometimes that when God comes and he speaks through other people and situations, that it's not a voice of comfort. It's a voice of truth, and it's a voice of direction that says, this is what the situation is. This is why you're here. Now go. Take this step. Do this thing. That's what fathers do. They push us into our destiny. They call things out of us. They tell us who we really are. A lot of our earthly fathers haven't done that. But we serve a God who's our heavenly Father, who wants to tell us who we are. And I think sometimes we're longing for that, and we need that when we find ourselves in situations where we don't really know what to do next because we don't see God, we don't feel God. He's not just glaringly present. It's like, yes, Holy Spirit, speak to me, but I need a Mordecai in my life to clarify the reality, to clarify why I'm here, and to say, go. Go. Do it. Move forward. To be encouraged in the midst of it, to push us into our destiny. Now, I want to pause here for a moment. I want to say there are some of you that are in this house today where you need to step up and start being a Mordecai.
That's good.
Start being a Mordecai. Look to the people that God has given you influence over. They may be younger, they may be older, most of them may be older, maybe younger, They may just be younger in the faith, and they're looking for people to step up and speak, who will speak truth and direction and faith into their lives. It's not just the job of a pastor. I could tell you, I could list you Mordecais in my life. Yes, my father's a Mordecai. Lynn Stroop is a Mordecai. Matt Spears is a guy that's a Mordecai in my life that can look and say, here's the reality. Here's the situation. It is God that is speaking to you. Now go. Well, I wanted you to make me feel better. Well, if I don't tell you this, you're never going to feel better. Go. Do it. There's consequences here. And I don't mean this to be harsh. Maybe some of you could just start praying and say, hey, who should I be a Mordecai to? Who are the Esthers in my life that I need to speak to, that I need to help? When I first became the pastor of this church, I was doing a wedding here, and there was somebody that was here, and a lady in the church who came up to me, and she's actually in this service, Miss Peggy, and she said, hey, I want you to meet this lady. And I met her, and she said, I think this lady would have a word for you. And Miss Peggy said, why don't you get out your phone and record it? I'm like, come on, Peggy, I don't record anything on my phone. And so I listened because she's normally right. And I got out my phone. This lady who I don't know her from Adam, begins to speak. And she was right on the money. And one of the things she said about this house, church, she said, this is going to be a house of fathers. That God is going to raise up fathers in this house to send people out and to give them direction into their life. I'm studying for this message. And that was 7 years ago. Studying at Caldy's. And I felt the Lord say, it's time for you to be a father. I've called you to it. Stop holding back. Stop thinking that you're not qualified enough, or you're not old enough, or you don't have enough experience, and function in what I've called you to function in. And I want to tell some of you in here today, step up and speak some truth with love and grace and specificity, and call things out that young people need to have them called out. Do it. We need it. I'm a product of this house because someone said, this is what I see in you. Now go get it. Can I say this too? Quit complaining about those who are younger or less mature and start speaking life. Be a father. This isn't just to men either, right? Be a father. Speak life. They need it. This is exactly what Esther needed. And that's what Mordecai did. And then you see Esther's courage. I think she's one of the most courageous people in all of Scripture because she didn't have power. She had a little bit of influence. She was in a place against her will. She had to do some things to survive that most of us may not have to do, if you all catch my drift. And if she refused to do those things, she could be killed too. She wasn't there because of her intelligence, according to the king. She wasn't there because of the value added to the kingdom. She was there for one reason and one reason only, her body. Think about that for a moment. But she wasn't there alone. She listens to Mordecai. And Mordecai, she says, Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, listen to this. Though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. And this is the statement I love. If I must die, I must die. If I must die, I must die. So Mordecai went and did everything Esther had ordered him. Esther was like, give me 3 days, Mordecai. I'm going to test this out and see if the Lord's going to speak. But she made the decision, if I must die, then I must die, but give me 3 days. You all pray and fast. Even though we don't see God, we got to wonder who they're appealing to, and I have to believe it's him. And I was thinking of this phrase about Esther. Effectively, what Mordecai said to her was, if not you, then who? Esther, if not you, then who? Yeah, God's faithful. He'll do it, but if not you, then who? If you don't do this, Esther, who will? And I started to think about how many situations in our life where we have to confront something. We have to take a step and do something, and if it's not us, then who? You want to break those generational curses off your life, those patterns, the dysfunction. If not you, then who? We did child dedication today. If not the parents, then who? The teachers? The coaches? The Justice Department? The aunts, the uncle, who? God's faithful. He'll bring people, don't get me wrong, but if not you, then who? What is it in your life that if it's not you, then who? It doesn't have to be monumental. Maybe a lot of the monumental things just start off as small things. Maybe it's your finances. If it's not you, then who? It's your health. Praying for God to heal you, and rightfully so, God can heal you and do all those things, but maybe there's just small things in your health that you need to do, and if not you, then who? Maybe it's your marriage. If not you, then who? Maybe it's a family relationship. Well, that person, if not you, then who? Maybe it's just I'm sorry. Maybe it's will you forgive me? Maybe it's I forgive you. Maybe it's I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this, because if not you, then who? How long have we waited for other people and other situations and God to change situations? When God does, God works, but he doesn't do what we can do. God wasn't going to drag Esther by the back of her hair into the kingdom or the royal palace room, whatever. But God was going to be with her. If not you, then who? I was really thinking about that this whole week. If not me, then who? You have the opportunity right now to change the course of your life, to change the direction of someone else's life. And if not you, then who? And she says, if I must die, then I die. I'm going to do it. She was courageous. She was determined. She was selfless. And I was thinking, how do we define her courage? I just thought you could define her courage like this: faithfulness, obedience, and dependence. Faithfulness, obedience, and dependence. What was she faithful in? She was faithful in the fact that she was able to take a step without knowing the end result. She had an assumed result, death, but she didn't know. She was walking not by sight, but by faith. That's kind of how God does. I mean, I like end results. God, tell me the end result, and then I'll do it, right? But God came to Abraham and said, Abraham, uproot everything and go to a land that I will show you. Well, God, show me the land, and then I will go. And God said, no, go, and I will show you. Like when you're so dependent on the turn-by-turn directions of God, that's not a fun place to be. You know, Lauren and I were going to North Carolina a few years ago for a family reunion thing, and we wanted coffee, and we're in West Virginia, and so we type in coffee, and it's a Starbucks, like, hey, let's go to Starbucks, and she hits the thing, and we're driving, and we don't know where we're at. Like when I'm here, I don't use, Google Maps to get to some place I already know, and this was Apple Maps, by the way, and we were using it, which we don't use anymore because of this, and we're going all over the place, and we end up in the middle of a subdivision. I'm like, I don't think Starbucks is here. Lauren's like, it's what the map says. Probably one of the biggest arguments in our marriage. Like, it's not here. Lauren, come on. Look up. There's houses. Where's the Starbucks? In the garage? Get in here. We've since, mended our relationship, but I mean, I was so frustrated. Kind of like that Office episode where they're driving and they're like, I don't think we should be going here. And before you know it, they're in the pond, right? The whole drive right in the pond because that's the direction it's took. But there is kind of that way with the Lord where he's taking us turn by turn. Right. And we have an idea of where we should be, but we ultimately don't know. And we're waiting in 100 yards, turn right. In 100 feet, 50 feet. You miss it, rerouting, right? Rerouting. That we just take the first step without knowing the end result. And that's what Esther did. She had faith in Mordecai. You see, Mordecai needed Esther as much as Esther needed Mordecai. They needed each other. I don't believe she would have done what she did without Mordecai saying, go. This is it, Esther. It's time. And she took that step. She had faith. She was obedient. What's obedient? It's doing it because God said it, because you trust him. Yes, why do we need fathers in our life? Because I really think that fathers teach us how to trust. Yes. So do mothers. Don't get me wrong. Here, guys, I'm not trying to be, men are better than women, so if you think that, I don't believe that. But the point is that if you only view God as judge and someone who's there to strike you down and discipline you, you're not really going to trust him that much. Because you're going to be so afraid of making a mistake that God will be there and go, like whack-a-mole. You ever feel like it's playing whack-a-mole with God? You pop up, you're waiting for him to whack you? That's not how God is. Last week we talked about the prodigal son. He's a father. The greatest revelation of God in Scripture is father. Mordecai was a father to Esther. And if you don't view God as father and you don't trust him, it's going to be pretty hard to take a step when you don't know the end result. Because you're afraid. You're afraid. Now, we can be afraid of what the result may be and still have trust in God. That's when we do it afraid. But when we're afraid of the cosmic entity, we don't often want to take a step. And I think for Esther was, okay, I'm going to be obedient because of my relationship with Mordecai. I'm going to trust. And then I'm just going to remain dependent. She was dependent on God to move, to work, to orchestrate this situation. I think some of the most courageous things that we can do is just be faithful, obedient, and dependent on God. You want courage? Faith. What's he telling you to do? Do you trust him? And will you remain dependent on him when it works out? Even when then you won't take credit for it because it's him. See, courage isn't just some movie moment, right, where it's so amazing and the score plays behind you and you get all these feelings and you're a ripped out person, you know what I mean? No, courage is just doing what God said and trusting that he's faithful and just being dependent on him. And that's what Esther does. And I just think it's so amazing. If I must die, then I'll die. And if not me, then who? And you really just see God's providence all over this. That's the third thing, because the story picks up, and in the meantime of all of this going on, Mordecai, who works at the gate for the king, had overheard of a plot to assassinate King Xerxes, and he sent word to the king's people, and the plot was foiled, and Xerxes' life was spared because of Mordecai doing his thing. In the meantime, Haman is constructing these 75-foot stakes they called gallows that he was going to impale Haman on, and all the Jews were going to be impaled on. And this was, so barbaric. They would literally set someone on top of the stake and drive them down until it came out of their mouth. Yeah, while they were alive. This is what Haman was planning because of his hatred and his insecurity of Mordecai. And God begins to work in all of this stuff. God is on the clock. There's 11 months. You ever feel like God is on a shot clock in your life? Like, hey, clock's ticking down. God, you got to do something. It's kind of where they're at. So one night, it just so happened one night, that the king had trouble sleeping after all this stuff is going on. So the king had trouble sleeping, so he ordered an attendant to bring the book of the history of his reign so it could be read to him. You understand? Do you ever have a personal history of your life and just get up and read it in the middle of the night? I wonder how amazing I am. You know? Have someone walking around recording everything you do so you can read it, be like, yep, I'm a good king. You know? So, attendant brings it to him, and it says he begins to read. In those records, he discovered an account of how Mordecai had exposed the plot of Bigthana, and Teresh, two of the eunuchs who guarded the door to the king's private quarters. They had plotted to assassinate King Xerxes. It just so happens on this night that he wakes up and says, bring me the annals of my reign, and that the servant picks out just the book that has that story in it, and King Xerxes flips to that page and reads it. He says, what reward or recognition did we ever give Mordecai for this? The king asked. His attendant said, nothing has been done. So he says, who's in the outer court? The king inquired. As it happened, Haman had just arrived in the outer court of the palace to ask the king to impale Mordecai on the pole he had prepared. And it just so happened that he just read about Mordecai. So the king says, bring him in. So Haman came in, and the king said, what should I do to honor a man who truly pleases me? Haman's like, I'm the man that truly pleases you. This is what I would do, King Xerxes. He said, if the king wishes to honor someone, he should bring out one of the king's own royal robes, as well as a horse that the king himself has ridden, one with a royal emblem on its head. Let the robes and the horse be handed over to one of the king's most noble officials. Let him see that the man whom the king wishes to honor is dressed in the king's robes and led through the city square on the king's horse. Have that official shout as they go, this is what the king does for someone he wishes to honor. Excellent, the king said to Haman. Quickly, take the robes and my horse and do just as you have said for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the gate of the palace, and leave nothing out that you have suggested. So I just think this is amazing. Haman starts walking around. Mordecai has the position that he wants, and Haman has to shout, look at what the king does for someone he wishes to honor. All because Esther took a step. Esther goes to the king, and he says, obviously he doesn't kill her. He says, what do you want, Esther? You're so beautiful. I'll give you half my kingdom. I just want a dinner. Okay, let's have dinner. And what does he want, Esther? I just want another dinner. And she orchestrates this, and Haman's there, and then this whole scene unfolds. It's like the climax of the movie where it comes out that Haman has done what he's done, and that Esther really is a Jew. She hid it for a while, and he's like, oh my gosh. And then Haman gets impaled in the same pole that he built for Mordecai to be impaled on. And then Esther says, what are we going to do about this decree where all the Jews are going to be killed? And he says, well, I can't undo that decree, but I'm going to issue another decree that tells the Jews that they do have recourse, and they can just straight up fight anybody that they want and defend themselves. And that goes out, and then you kind of know the end of the story. Since the Jews are prepared and God is on their side, they just smoke a bunch of Persian people, and they're protected, and then they have this huge celebration, this festival. I think the word is like Purim, can't really pronounce it, but they still celebrate it to this day because of what God did, all behind the scenes. It's crazy, 10 chapters. I could take 10 weeks, easily, and preach through this. But just because Esther did what she did, and Mordecai did what he did, and God did everything behind the scenes and orchestrated it, and was working at every stop and at every turn. And it's not till we can read this story in its entirety, and we can look back to the 10 chapters that we say, there's God, there's God, there's God, there's God, but he's never mentioned. And that's just how it is for our lives. That maybe what you could do right now is just reflect a little bit back over your life and see, well, there was God. There he was. There he was. There he was. I don't see him now, but 10 years down the road, I'm going to look back and say, there he was. There. Because he's faithful. Because he's dependable. Because he's our Father. And I just want to know what the word providence means. I looked it up, and it's just the protective care of God, or the timely preparation for future eventualities is what providence is. That God in his providence is preparing you in a timely manner for future eventualities that you don't even know yet are coming. And he's with you. And here's the thing, though. God's providence intersects with human responsibility. God's providence intersects with our responsibility to do the thing that God will not do so that he can do the thing that we cannot do. So with that big pithy statement, what do you need to do? What step do you need to take? What is that thing that God is asking you to do? Maybe it isn't clear and you just need to spend some time hearing, or maybe the prayer would just be that God would send Mordecai into your life to speak some truth, to impart some faith, and to give some direction. What do you need to do? No matter how big or how small, what is it that you need to do? What step do you need to take without taking responsibility for the end result? That your only responsibility is to step in faith and to trust that I walk by faith, not by sight, that God, you're going to work, that God, you are working, you're in the director's chair. And maybe that's the question. Are you willing to give God the director's seat and let him work and let him move? And then you just be faithful, obedient, and dependent. And you watch his final product. Because as I said at the beginning, when you watch a movie, you are unaware of the chaos that went behind the scenes, and you're blessed by the finished product. That's what the director handles. You may be in the middle of chaos. You may be in the middle of upheaval. You may be in the middle of just, I need some truth. I need to know what's going on. And we're going to do a series on prayer throughout the rest of this month. It's going to be really good. That can help us hear from God. But will you let him sit in the director's chair? Will you let him do what he does best? And that's work behind the scenes. I know we want the demonstration. We want the big manifestation, the big thing. But I'm telling you, God is in the details. God is in the details. And he's so much more for you than you could ever think or imagine. And he wants you to move through this. But his providence, his care will intersect with your responsibility. And that's what I see in this story. If not you, then who? And if I must die, I'll die. And I'll go forward. Let's pray. Those of you that are going to come forward and help pray, I invite you to come. And I always want to encourage you. If you need prayer, we would love to pray with you. No matter what the situation is, there's something powerful about stepping forward in faith and letting someone lay hands on you and pray for you and just encourage you. So I would encourage you to do that here at the end. But now if you just mind, bow your heads, and maybe you could just ask the Holy Spirit, what are you saying? What do you want me to do? How do I take that step without knowing the end result and trust you? Just take a moment. Thank you, Father, for just being such a good Father and being present with us. Even though we may not sense you, it doesn't mean that you are not working. Help us to give you that position that says director. And help us to follow you, to follow your lead, to trust your vision, to trust that the final product will not be what the current situation looks like. I would pray for anyone that is here or watching online. You would say, you know what, I feel like my next step is just to follow Jesus, to become a Christ follower, to give my life to Jesus and experience the forgiveness and the freedom and the direction that he has. If that's you, then I would just ask you to make that decision and pray a prayer that looks like this, that Heavenly Father, I turn from my sin and the way I've been living, and I choose to follow you and receive your forgiveness that comes from your Son, Jesus Christ. And I not only declare that you have forgiven me, but that you are my leader, my Lord, and I will follow you, and I will follow your direction. That, Lord, you could help me walk in faith and obedience and dependence. And I pray for every one else of us, whether we're in this season or not. Maybe that we would just walk in faith and obedience and dependence. And if you're speaking to us to be a Mordecai, would we stand up and assume that position? And if we are as an Esther right now, we would be receptive to the voice of Mordecai in our lives for that truth, that faith, and that direction. And Lord, we just ask you to do all of these things in the precious name of Jesus. As we said earlier, it is Paul's prayer that you do exceedingly and abundantly above anything that we could ask for or imagine, according to the power that is at work within us, and that's his power. It's in his name we pray. Everybody said? Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for being here today. God bless you.
Hey, thanks for joining us online today. If you're new here or if you made the decision to follow Jesus, we would love to connect with you and let you know how to take your next steps. Real quick, text New to Faith to 97,000 and someone from our team will get in touch soon. You can also visit our website at faithcommunity.co to learn more about the church. And stay in touch on social media. Shoot us a DM over on Facebook or Instagram if you have any questions, and you can even share this service with your friends. If you're joining us on YouTube, make sure to hit that red subscribe button and the bell icon so you're the first to know when new content is available. Another way we want to stay connected is through prayer. If there's something going on in your life that you would like someone to pray with you about, please let us know. Email prayer@faithcommunity.co or submit a request through the app, and someone from our team will pray with you and whatever is going on in your life. Thanks again for being here today, and we'll see you next time.